Welcome to the April 20th edition of Monday Motivation, PowerPoints for Successful Christian Living. This week we have an interview with Robin Travis, and she's going to give a different perspective on homelessness. She faced that situation, and she doesn't fit the typical profile of somebody you would see as homeless. So she's sharing her experience. From this, we'll get an understanding of what different people go through, and I encourage you to get involved in helping people who need our help in this area. So I'd like to welcome here Robin Travis. Robin is a friend of mine, and she's recently been through a situation involving homelessness, but not typically what we would think of homelessness. And I've invited her on to the webcast today via Zoom, of course. We're doing our physical distancing, not social, but physical distancing. So Robin is joining us by Zoom, and she wants to share her story with the Monday Motivation audience. Please welcome Robin.
Well, thank you, Bruce, for having me on this media network. And yes, my story has, it's taken a few twists and turns. I was living in an apartment in a house, and the house was to be sold. So the goal was they were putting it on the market, and I moved out March 1st. And so I had a place lined up that was being under construction, renovations, a place to move into, according to the property manager. And we were in contact. And then days before March 1st, he was actually stopped taking my phone calls and not responding to the texts. So then I started to really get concerned about this place, and is it going to be available a week later or 2 weeks later? And so finally it was revealed that in fact the place wasn't ready, but he just stopped communication. So now I was in a place of, I have nowhere to go. I have to move out March 1st because the house is being sold out of, need for the owners. And so here I was on March 1st, and I was very thankful that a person came alongside, because I had told many people my story because they were asking what's happening with moving, because I knew for a few months in advance. And so I had to have a place to store my stuff, and then the thought of even paying money to store it on top of the expense of the cost of renting, because places are shot up very high even before COVID. And then, so I was thankful that someone came alongside and said, yes, I have space for you, offered it, and I was able to store my stuff there. But now it was like, where am I going to go? And I did have a couple from my church come and said, we have 2 rooms available for you and your daughter. My one daughter, there's 3 of us with myself. My one daughter was going with another family member, but a kind of an overcrowded situation. So I was offered to go there, but I knew it would be a little tense for everyone trying to make it work. And so this couple offered for us to come and stay for 2 weeks, for a time. And COVID broke out in the meantime. So then they're over a certain age of retirement, and one of their older daughters started to get concerned about their health and maybe having people live there that could be bringing things in. So that developed a concern where I had to find somewhere else to go. And in the meantime, I'm looking for places. I'm still working. And while I'm looking, I'm running into so many problems with the credit score because I've stopped using credit. This is one of the big issues for me. And it stopped using credit about 6-7 years ago. And your credit rating actually, it goes back to 0 when you're not using credit after a period of time, like 6 or 7 years. I don't know exactly. But my credit score was at 0, and everywhere I was looking to rent, which there was very few places on the market now because COVID hit, the quarantine, if you will, shutting down. And So every place that was there with the high rents, very high, wanted a perfect credit score, which I had a 0. It didn't mean it was a bad score. It was like a non-existent score. So that was eliminating me from even qualifying whether I had the money in the bank or not. And I had a good rental history, but they weren't interested in that. They were basing, sadly, on the credit score.
So if I understand, sorry to interrupt, what the problem was then is not a lack of income or lack of savings, but just very high rents and availability, and they're meeting their requirements in terms of a credit score, even though there were no credit issues. Would that
Right.
be fair to say?
That's it. And so I had there, most everywhere is requiring an employment letter. They're requiring pay stubs to prove you're employed. So I have all of that, and then they would like the rental history to go back to the renters, the landlords, and get your sort of references that way. So I had all that, and but the credit score was hurting me the most, and I didn't qualify there. So I was turned down. I actually got a couple of other opportunities, but I was being turned down because of this.
Okay.
Yeah. So my 2 daughters, they both have good credit scores. They use credit and they're working. So they weren't even allowing their credit scores. It had to be all 3 of us with perfect credit scores.
Right.
Even though they had great ones. So that was a huge disappointment after disappointment. And you just start feeling sadly, I just started feeling really helpless because I'd never been in this situation before. It's very vulnerable. And it just feels like, you kind of start questioning, like, where am I going wrong here? Like what? And as a single mom, and I've been a single mom for quite a few years, so with a single income, and so it was just a lot of difficulty. And then, sadly, I kind of experienced, if you will, I pulled out of it, but sadly, I experienced people around just saying, well, you don't look homeless, and this is what a homeless person looks like. So sadly, people don't understand, and I guess I didn't understand either until I was in this situation. Yeah.
Right. It sounds like you've managed to work through it, but yeah, it's very difficult. So you were relying on friends. You weren't staying in a hotel or something like that.
No, because my income is quite limited. So although I had the money for the first and last, working with my daughters, I had it. But I mean, I couldn't waste, take money and just use it in a way that would take away for the money to pay for the rent once I got a place, the first and last, which is usually around $4,000.
Yeah. So it's good and nice that friends were able to step in and help, but you know, you can't really, that's only a short-term solution when you absolutely have to. It's not a long-term solution. So um, it's good to see that people did step up and help you in that way too.
Yeah.
So how did you end up getting a place in the end?
Well, actually, I really kept networking, and I had a lot of people praying for me and asking me, what are you doing? What have you tried this? Have you tried that? And there were some offers along the way, but a lot of them would say, well, it's just a 1-bedroom, or no, you can't bring both daughters, or and these were people I knew, if you will, sort of that was my best connection. And some of them I didn't know, or through a friend, some of them, and then, or you can't bring your cat. And so there was a lot of kind of, opportunities, but they wouldn't be long term. And that was the other concern, to put out money, even if it was reduced rent, put it out for a short-term situation that I would have to correct again anyways. So yeah, so so finally a person came and said, well, I've been thinking about renting and I'm going to make my place, I was going to put this apartment in, and I've known, you've said that you needed a place, and I know you need a place for your daughters. So I'm actually in the process of putting this apartment together, and I just have to put up a wall, and and this is the rent, and it was fair market value rent, obtainable. And so really it must have been, I credit it to prayer, and then somebody taking action and just providing a need, helping me with this need.
Okay, so that's good. It's interesting how God takes us, we pray and he could instantly pop us out of a situation that's difficult and awkward, but he provides and he gets us through that situation. Would you tend to agree with that, or what have you learned from this?
Yes, actually, because the place, the way God worked was I kept reaching, sort of lowering my standards. It's not about like lowering what would really work for me. Because I was starting to get desperate. And, but then in this way, by me waiting and just pressing into God, pursuing God, he provided far more than I could even ask for in a place. He really did. And it's blessing the landlord as well, but it really blessed myself and my daughters, and increased, look what God can do when you really just trust him. I was very careful in the whole process to not murmur, because I didn't want to be 40 years. So I already knew I was in the wilderness, and it was very important to just keep thanking him, even when this door got shut and that door got shut. And the second person I'm staying with, family members, if they knew, they would be very concerned, because now it's COVID, the person is a certain age, and now, so there was lots of variables coming at me, but I had to keep my eyes on the Lord.
Yeah, that's good. I laughed when you said murmuring, because that's what I do, is I grumble and then, okay, that's not right, get over it. But yeah, I know that feeling.
Yeah.
If there's lots of other homeless people out there and their situation has changed dramatically now with all the lockdowns and situations, from your experience and from what you know, what can you tell us about people that are still out there and homeless, and maybe their long-term outlook is not as good as yours? What could you tell us about their situation?
I really feel blessed for the way my situation worked out, and I've been in touch, and I've been part of the homeless ministry with John McNally through, and the whole team down at Memorial Park twice a week. I had to step back a little bit when I was staying, with vulnerable people, but just to say this, the thing is, since COVID, they used to have washrooms they could use at, Tim Hortons or the library, City Hall. There was places they could go, and even the nonprofit, like the agencies, Gate 316, places like that. But so what's happened is all those places are shut down in the washrooms. And then even the nonprofit agencies, they've scaled back on the hours a lot. So they've, the rule is that we're to stay at home. They don't have a home to stay at, and then they don't even have accessible washrooms. And then one of the agencies, the Backdoor Mission, opened up their doors, if you will, 5 days a week, but only with 2-hour windows on the washrooms twice a day, and then you're lining up one at a time. So I really feel for the way in which they feel very, if you will, kind of segregated, and also even almost singled out in so many ways, but it appears a little bit more forgotten, even though it's talked about, but the actions, there's a lot of concerns, a lot.
Yeah, I know you mentioned John. We had him on a couple of months ago, and it's amazing what he's doing and continuing to do through this crisis.
Yeah.
He's taking precautions. He's had to make changes, but yeah, that's great. and great that you're involved with that too.
Yeah.
What can the rest of us do?
Well, uh,
Awareness counts. You know, what can we do, even if we can't go out because of our situation? What are the different things we can do to help?
well, if there was any, the really big concern I have is if there was a portable washroom available, even at Memorial Park in a couple of spots. And I'm not trying to break any rules, but it's such a basic need. So that's really the biggest need. And obviously shelter is a huge need. If there was buildings that could be opened up to have, you know, like those are really the most huge needs for the homeless. They have food, but washrooms and shelter, they're very limited on. So we can contact our MPP and say, please, and uh, there must be another way. That's what I'm left with right now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. And I think, prayer is important, but then prayer also has action to go with it. Getting involved in some way you can. If you can't get involved yourself, supporting ministries like John's ministry or the other downtown Oshawa ministries that can assist these people in different ways. And yeah, where rules need to change around washrooms and things, that's where we need to get the local governments and provincial government involved. So great advice, great ideas. Anything else you'd like to share with us?
I really appreciate that you are giving a voice to the vulnerable, and because sometimes the hope becomes so overwhelming, or the hopelessness so overwhelming that they don't want to talk about it anymore, because just feeling, I don't know, it's just the labels and the shame involved. And I experienced some of that even as a working person who was without a place to live for 6 weeks. So I know some of it, but I just thank you for what you're doing.
Well, thank you. And we appreciate you coming on and sharing with us. As a motivation for this week, I would say get informed, stay educated about the needs of people. We're supposed to be salt and light in this earth. Get informed, get educated. We've given some good information here. Thank you, Robin. And then pray and ask the Lord, what can I do? Don't just leave it at prayer. Ask, what can I do? Get involved, support them financially, whatever your calling is. Don't ignore it. Get involved. And that's my motivation to you on this Monday Motivation. Thank you, Robin, for joining us. That was very informative, and you gave us some great tips for getting involved. Thank you. Be sure to like this video, share it with your friends, go to our website, monday-motivation.ca, and we will see you next week on Monday Motivation. Have a great week.